again, the press having yet another field day after former President Trump got indicted for a fourth time. A Georgia grand jury hitting Trump and 18 others with a staggering 41 counts. Prosecutors accusing Trump of being the head of a criminal enterprise to overturn the 2020 election. And they are using the RICO Act, that's a statute normally reserved for mob bosses. The media and Democrats like Hillary Clinton could not help but gloat as the news broke.
Madam Secretary, fancy meeting you.
Oh, I can't
believe this. Yeah, this is not the circumstances in which I expected to be talking to you. Yet another set of indictments.
If Trump or another Republican wins, they can pardon their way out of that Jack Smith case or just order DOJ to drop the case. This is the insurance, so it should be big. I think it's done carefully. It's done well.
Forgotten that Beyonce's tour hit Atlanta tonight. She did say, "I can smell the dishonesty on your breath."
This is a tour de force. Hers was carpet bombing them into smithereens. It's shock and awe.
It's much bigger than Watergate. It's of a whole different dimension. It goes to the very foundation of democracy.
New charges and trial dates now on a collision course with the election season. Trump's calendar is already pretty loaded with the 3 other indictments he's facing so far. Across the country, the former president faces 91 charges in 4 jurisdictions. The Georgia DA wants to try all 19 defendants at the same time, and she wants to do it all within 6 months. Trump and his team are slamming the latest indictment.
They're all chomping at the bit, aren't they? And it's ironic that they waited 2.5 years to try and now have it in 6 months. The reason was they wanted to mess him up right in the middle of a campaign. They wanted to line him up so that he's tied up in court
and
can't
about 4 weeks ago.
They can't win against him otherwise. So this is desperation at its best.
Greg, is this worse than Watergate?
Well, I guess the worse than Watergate guy wasn't available, so they got another worse than Watergate guy to take his place. He's like the B-level worse than Watergate. He's John Dean. He's definitely no Carl Bernstein. Or maybe I have them confused. I don't know. Just remember, Democrats and media, you will never be able to contest another election as long as you live. And you love doing it. No more. You're not going to be able to do that. And unless your candidate is a pre-chosen one by the establishment, you will be targeted with lawfare, which means your staff and your lawyers and your family will be sued and charged, because all of these indictments are meant to send a warning to everybody else. Don't work with Trump, right? So you will lose a lot of time, you will lose your minds, you will lose a lot of money. So if you're on the opposition, you're watching this show right now and laughing, and because you're getting what you're applauding something that isn't moral at all. It's something that is emotional and kind of petty, but it's going to come back to bite you in the ass. If you're a Republican, all right, this has to be exhausting. It has to be confusing. It has to be overloading because it never stops. That's the point. They're trying to wear you down. Wearing somebody down is a type of persuasion. It's the political version of brute force, submitting endless passwords, hoping that eventually you'll guess it correctly. That's what the indictments are doing. They're constantly putting this in here. Even the attempt itself is tiresome because you have to deal with it. You're the machine that responds. This is the largest political cancellation in history. It's a bloodless assassination. They want you to freak out over it. You need not to. The scarier response is silence, because that means you take it more seriously than they'll be aware of. The Democrats, and then I'll shut up, are using this reality show trick. If they pile on the events, right, whether it's challenges, if you ever watch any reality show, they start stacking the events, challenges, obstacles, stunts. They're trying to get the most visual, memorable thing to happen. And that's what they're doing. They want you to freak out. They want you to blow your mind. But no, just go back to work and settle it that way.
Judge, before 9:06 a.m. this morning on Newsroom, both Jonathan Turley and former Governor Chris Christie, who was also a GOP candidate, had called the latest indictments that they read excessive and unnecessary. Is that sort of the consensus that you're seeing on that side of the aisle?
Well, I think that 4 indictments in 5 months is a bit excessive. I think it kind of reeks of, as Alina Habas said, desperation. But here's my concern. Look, there's an issue that has to do with preemption, okay? And the truth is that we've got Jack Smith, the special counsel in Washington, who's already indicted Trump for attempting to unlawfully overturn an election. And in that indictment are several references to the Georgia statute, specifically Section 10B, 12A, 21ABC, 21 through 33. And what does that tell you? Why am I blathering on about that? What it tells you is that the feds have already indicted him for this. She then, as a local DA, is precluded from going forward with her own indictment. It doesn't work in the reverse. But when the feds come in, the local can't follow up and say, I'm going to indict him too. No, you can't. There are procedural issues. And then there's collateral estoppel, which is another legal term that I apologize for, if in the event there is a conviction or a plea that would prevent him from being tried in state court on the very issues that Jack Smith used in his indictment. Now, let me say a couple things. This all has to do with Donald Trump's state of mind. The issue is it criminal to pursue the legal means to disagree with an election result? And if that's true, then Stacey Abrams, Hillary Clinton, Bush v. Gore, let's talk about the lawyers in Bush v. Gore. Didn't they have meetings with lawyers and say, did we get this many votes in that state? Did we get this many? What about those hanging chads in your county? Should we make all of those meetings illegal and part of a conspiracy? And by the way, the RICO statute, that's just theater. That's just a bunch of theater in the midst of politics and a legal thing. The issue is not whether he wanted to overthrow it, but did he believe that he won? If he believed that he won, pursuing all these avenues are okay for him because in themselves they are not illegal. If you say, look, I need to find 11,000 votes, that's very different from saying, I need you to find me 11,000 votes somewhere. He just knows he's behind by 11,700 votes. And finally, did he know he lost, and did he then pursue all these avenues, or did he believe he won and was doing everything he can? It's going to be very hard to prove that.
Harold Ford Jr., your thoughts?
I differ with my friend the judge on this for a couple of reasons. First, I lost an election before for the United States Senate back in 2006 in Tennessee, and there were those who told me to contest it. I believed the vote count, and I lost by a few dozen thousand votes. You have every right to contest any race. My father, when he first was elected to Congress in 1974, they reported that he had lost that night. He went down to the election commission and confronted them and said, I want to get an understanding of what's going on here. It turned out they had not counted 8 of the biggest Democratic precincts in the city. He won his race.
Do you think it was on purpose?
We learned later it was definitely on purpose, and it might even have had a racial dimension to it. But once you exhaust, and I heard Governor Christie, once you exhaust the legal avenues, and in the state of Georgia, remember, they counted those votes 3 times. They counted them the night of, they then counted again using the machines, and they counted a manual count, which President Trump had every right to ask for. Once all of that happened, to your point, Judge, you're exactly right on the fact this will be to his state of mind. Now, the fact that President Trump is running for president, should that be some protection? He chose to run for president. So it's not as if that becomes a defense, if you are being charged or you're being a target of investigation, all you can do is run for president and say, you know what, you're going to get in the middle of my campaign. If you do, I don't mean to be facetious or flippant about it, but it does do that. Finally, this case here is probably the most interesting for the lawyers because, as we all noted, he cannot, if former President Trump is elected again to be president, he cannot pardon himself if he's found guilty on these Georgia charges. So this is a 4th indictment. I think if you look at it legally, and I listened to Jonathan Turley, I listened to Andy McCarthy, I listened to Chris Christie on the network all day today. I thought they said some things that I agreed with. They said some things that made me learn. But the one takeaway I had was, this is what federalism allows states to do, to enforce their laws here. And we'll see, to your point, what you said is exactly right, Judge. His state of mind, if they have evidence showing his state of mind is different than what he claims, he'll have more of a problem.
You don't think this is totally over the top as a judge? I mean, even when everything you say makes sense, except it's all bullshit. It's all nonstop. We know this is designed to banish and isolate and to destroy a political outsider. Who predicted this? Chuck Schumer. Remember, said, don't mess with intel agencies. Don't mess with the intel agencies. They'll arrest your team and keep it off the field.
But do you not think he's done anything to deserve any of this?
He is probably one of the most troubling, consequential figures in history. But no, He doesn't deserve any of this.
And by the way, why didn't they indict him until he announced he was running for president?
Well, they probably had to
Give
do
me a break.
I don't know the answer to that, but I would also think if he indicted them right away, I don't mean to interrupt Charlie, but if they indicted him immediately, the answer might have been, you guys didn't do a full investigation. How could you have done this?
Oh, baloney. Baloney. It doesn't take
He
2.5
was going to say,
years to
hey,
get
you
indicted.
guys, he was going to say something about anything. It was always going to be political, or it was always going to be too rushed, or it was always going to be too late. It was
Right.
never going to say, oh, actually, you know what, you guys caught me, you're right. That was never going to be the case.
And I agree with Dana.
So, Charlie, are you going to announce for president so you don't get indicted?
If I had known that back in high school, I would stay out of so much trouble. But no, it's all the timing proves that it's all political. I love what you were talking about how they have to get into his state of mind. These are people who don't even know what Trump means when he says "Make America Great Again," and suddenly they can tell you what was going on in his mind. As far as the memory of Democrats don't have the memory of goldfish. And so I'm worried that they're not going to remember the lesson that you just laid out, although it is an important one. I'm afraid what will be remembered is on the Republican side or on the conservative side. People are going to be looking around and saying, oh, you mean any DA anywhere in the country can file charges against a politician we don't like? You could go into my county in Southern Virginia and you could line up a grand jury that would somebody who overdosed on fentanyl that Joe Biden allowed into the border, somebody who was murdered by an illegal alien that Joe Biden waved into the country, and you could come up with charges of accessory to murder for President Biden, and you could charge him under this scam. And it's absolutely no, the only difference is that charging Joe Biden with accessory to murder for with fentanyl or an illegal alien would make more sense than the charges that are being leveled against Trump.
And this is even worse because the feds have already charged it, and that precludes the local DA from doing it.
Then it'll get thrown out. For what the judge said.
All right, judge, please.
I just want to apologize for saying bullshit.
You do.
Oh, you do? Did they
What did
make
you say again?